What's up fish friends, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dog. Now setting up a marine aquarium is a very exciting time, but today I'm going to run you through a few things that you probably didn't realise. If you're new to the channel, I put out a video every week with tips on how to set up and maintain an awesome reef tank. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on anything. Right, let's get to it. I'm going to start then with a few things about clownfish. If you're looking for your first saltwater aquarium, the odds are that you're thinking of getting a pair of clowns. And you're not alone there. I personally can't imagine having a tank without clownfish. They're synonymous with the reefs of the wild and with home aquariums alike. By and large, they're really easy to keep too. As long as you don't get more than two, they'll probably be model citizens and will be the first thing your friends wow at when they see your tank. Clowns don't need an anemone to survive or even thrive in a home aquarium, which is just as well because anemones are generally very difficult to keep, particularly for beginners. But if you are expecting your clowns to be the centrepiece of your tank, you might be disappointed. As often as not, they choose one spot of your tank and stay there for 95% of their lives. If you're lucky, that'll be a nice central spot in your tank, maybe by a nice wavy coral. But the reality is, in all likelihood, they will set up camp in the top corner of your aquarium, by the overflows, or by your flow pumps. And annoying as that might be, it's just their natural behaviour, so you're best off leaving them alone, rather than trying to shoo them away into the centre of the tank. And that's not all. While 99% of clownfish will be entirely peaceful, that is not always the case. They can have a serious case of Napoleon syndrome, and are known to defend their territory against pretty much anything. In the wild, they're even known to attack scuba divers, and in your tank, an aggressive clown will go for you when you put your hand in the tank, and I'm not talking about gentle nibbling. They'll draw blood with their bites. This is usually only the case with certain aggressive species like maroon clowns or tomato clowns, but ultimately clownfish are from the damsel family, and damselfish are notorious for their aggression, so even a little Nemo can be a proper bully, particularly when they're breeding or when they get older. And you might not have known that your clownfish will probably live longer than your cat or dog. With good husbandry, a clownfish can easily live for 10 to 20 years. Next up is something a little less dramatic and relates to the lights we use. Almost every light you'll come across in the hobby is tuned to the cool blue end of the spectrum. As you may know, the reason for that is because corals are photosynthetic animals that use that particular spectrum to grow. But what you won't realise is that it turns your living room into a lighthouse for Smurfs. Every house with a saltwater tank has an unmistakable blue glow emanating from the windows, and I guarantee your neighbours will wonder what's going on. Fortunately, blue isn't as sinister a colour as red is, but many hobbyists will use a purple light at night to grow macroalgae in their sumps, and that, so I'm told, is the same colour as cannabis grow lights, so make sure you get your story straight for when 50 knocks on your door. And while I'm at it with knock-on effects, you might want to think about ventilation. Water movement at the surface of your tank makes fresh water evaporate, which you can easily replace with an auto top-off pump. But on any decent sized tank, you'll likely lose upwards of 30 litres of water per week to evaporation. It's not something I've ever had a problem with, but if your house is susceptible to damp, it's something you'll need to think about. Whatever you do though, don't cover your aquarium to reduce evaporation. That restricts gas exchange, which will reduce available oxygen and will increase CO2 levels in the water, which in turn will restrict your coral growth and health. Back onto the cool stuff then, and I'd recommend you check out what goes on in your aquarium at night. When the lights go out is when all the freaky critters start to come out. And it's not just critters you've bought, that includes critters that have come into your tank on rocks or corals that you didn't even know you had. It's honestly magical, and it makes you realise that you're not just running a tank, you're running an entire ecosystem. If you look early in the morning, you'll probably see starfish, snails and so on covering the glass. But try this, most salty critters don't see red light, so try looking into your tank with a red light for a proper live show. Just remember that red lights in your living room will lead to your neighbours judging you hard. And going back to what I was saying about clowns, some fish are just total assholes. There are plenty of tiny and cute looking fish that will absolutely terrorise everything in your tank or demolish your corals. The worst culprits for this are the tiny dollar-sized juvenile fish like regal tangs that you fairly assume will always be small and cute, until they grow to over a foot long a few small years later. This is a very real issue and you need to be prepared to deal with the consequences, particularly when adding new fish, something your established aggressive fish might not take kindly to. But the good news is there are a couple of things you can do to easily mitigate aggression. If you put a mirror up against the glass, aggressive fish will think their reflection is a threat and will spend their day fending off their new rival. And after a few days have passed, just take the mirror away and they'll probably have forgotten what they were upset about. Acclimation boxes are also a great way to introduce new fish to your tank. They let your existing fish get used to the new arrival while putting a protective barrier between them and your new pet. As with the mirror, once your new guy has been in the tank for a week or so, your tank bully will probably have gotten bored and moved on. There are more drastic tricks to reduce aggression that I'm not a fan of, like rearranging your entire rockscape to remove existing territories, or putting the aggressor in the sump for a few days to think about what he's done and cool off. But sometimes, no matter what you do, the bully will keep going and won't stop until he's killed the new fish. Watching that happen is absolutely heartbreaking, particularly if it's your fault for not researching your fish properly in advance. So having a fish trap in your cupboard is a great idea for when all else fails. And the most important thing for me to tell you about is that new tanks are ugly. Now, the main reason we keep these amazing creatures is to create a stunning centerpiece for your living room. But there's simply no way around it. When you first set up your aquarium, it will probably look awful for at least a couple of months. You'll get diatom outbreaks, algae will take over your rocks and your sandbed, and you might even get cloudy bacterial blooms. There are no magic solutions though, and as with most things in this hobby, patience is the key. You can add some fish and critters that will eat the algae, but the best thing to do is just to ride it out for a couple of months while it burns itself off. Many new hobbyists will leave the hobby when things don't turn out the way they thought they would, particularly if the tank stays looking really bad for a long period of time. And nobody wants to have a tank covered in algae. But if you're patient, don't add too many fish at first, keep your lights nice and dim, and avoid corals for a good few months, I promise you'll come out the other side. You can use the bedding in period to do a bit of research to find out what's going on in your tank, and maybe to plan what fish to add next, work out what corals are suited to beginners, or check out other people's tanks. Looking at other people's tanks on forums, in the shops, on Facebook, or right here on YouTube will open your eyes to what's possible, let you see what appeals to you most, and inspire you to stay in this wonderful hobby for years to come. Now, please don't be put off by anything I've said in the video today. There is almost nothing in this hobby that can't be prevented or fixed with a little bit of research. And it's a real community hobby, so there are thousands of people out there on Facebook, YouTube and forums who will be only too happy to help you out. If you enjoyed the video then give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next week, and until next time, happy reefing.